LinkedIn is the only one that's not. God, why is LinkedIn so difficult? Ooh. Yeah, it's okay. We'll figure this out. Oh, wait a minute. This is the old one. Ah. There we go. All right, all right, all right. What are we doing here? Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right, so this is Tax Tip Thursdays. This is the main screen. Okay. So the intent of this, I guess you call it a podcast, is just to bring about the flow of information to kind of everybody, because there's a lot of information going back and forth as it relates to taxes, as it relates to business, finances, technology. I mean, everything is moving a million miles an hour now. And it's kind of a way to keep everybody in, as well as myself, informed on what's happening out there, right? Because there is a lot of stuff that's happening. So just a little about me and how we got here. So my name is Ramon. I go by Ray the Tax Guy on all the different platforms: YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, pretty much all the different platforms. So I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was about 8 or 9 years old, settled in New York, lived in New York for about 25 years. And then afterwards ended up joining the military. So I'm a military veteran. Iraq, Afghanistan, came back, and I started working in the finance industry it was in 2008 when I started working in finance. I started working investment management, that kind of stuff. They pulled me from the job that I was at to go to Iraq. So I went to Iraq, came back. And then I started my own firm doing investment management, but I noticed that everything touched taxes, and people were more interested in learning taxes than anything else. So that's when I started my journey in terms of getting more knowledge in terms of taxes. Taxes touch everything. I mean, tax law is essentially everything here in the United States is taxed in some way, shape, or form. And we'll talk about how all that works in all the subsequent videos. But anyway, yeah, so I found that people were wanting more tax advice. So I went ahead and registered and got what they call a P10. Well, you have to get that from the IRS to give you a brief background check just to make sure you're not a criminal. And then I went ahead and took a bunch of tests to actually become an enrolled agent. So I did that for about, I want to say like 4 or 5 years. And then I ended up working for the federal government. I ended up working in the federal government, and I said, you know what, I actually want to go back to federal service. And it turns out that I thought I wanted to go back, but no, this is where my passion is. So I left that and I started this company, Area Government Services. And then I initially started working on trying to get some government contracts, wrote a couple of proposals, then COVID hit and everything ceased. And we can talk about all that because I looked at the data. I mean, I'm a data analyst as well. So I was able to look at that information and kind of objectively come up with a conclusion. But yeah, so then I was doing that, and then I was getting calls from clients like, hey, can you do my taxes? Can you help me with my taxes? And so I went ahead and retook all those tests, got my enrolled agent. And so now I'm back, right? Now, in the world of social media, if you are not on social media right now, I mean, you're pretty much a dinosaur, right? Yeah, there are some cons to it. Like this is kind of uncomfortable for me. I'm normally an introvert. But you know, you got to do what you got to do. So I'm here now. And so that's essentially the origin of the business. Now, Tax Tip Thursdays came about. So I used to actually work for the Texas Veterans Commission. Shout out to the Veterans Commission. Um, I worked there for about a year. I learned so much about veteran benefits and things that veterans have access to that I didn't know before. And so, in talking with some of those folks there, they have a business entrepreneurship department. They invited me to do a talk, and that's what initially planted the seed as to, hey, I need to get out here and just provide information to people, because something that I might think is just common knowledge is really isn't. So um, that's why I'm here, is just to provide information so you all can go about and navigate the tax system. I mean, in my opinion, it shouldn't be this complicated, um, but it is what it is. So hopefully, in the future, they fix this tax code, because right now it's the organization, as I understand it, is disjointed. Different departments don't talk to other departments. You'll get a letter saying, "Hey, you owe $20,000," and sometimes you actually don't, because that department didn't send the notice to that department. So everything is kind of in its own silo. Um, and so that's where I believe there's needs to be some reorganization with the IRS. Um, I mean, we all got to do our civic duty and pay taxes, right? But yeah, there needs to definitely be some reorganization and um, some common sense, right? Because right now, if you try to understand kind of what's happening with the code, I mean, the code in and of itself is including the revenue bulletins, the tax law changes, and the tax code itself it's I mean upwards of 70,000 pages, and that's not how it originally started, right? I mean, tax was an option back. I'm talking founding fathers back in the day. Um, but society evolves, and so it's just sometimes you just have to kind of start from scratch. But I'll get on that soapbox later during the Tax Tip Thursdays, and we can talk about that if you have any comments. Let me see something here. Yeah, so that's kind of the origins of Tax Tip. This one's going to be short because I just wanted to kind of make the introduction and let y'all know kind of who I am and what we're going to do, and moving forward, what's going to happen with the videos. Basically, I'll cover topics, current events relating to taxes or tax law changes. I'll cover some history as far as the tax brackets or things of that nature, just so you can understand where we were and where we can potentially go. Because a lot of tax planning is knowing the rules of the game. If you don't know the rules of the game from time to time, then you can't plan for that, right? So that's a big part of tax planning, is just knowing what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot deduct, where you can and cannot go, and the changes that come about from year to year, right? Because every year is different. So there are some years where, I mean, they'll have 700 tax changes, tax law changes, just based on the tax law and the stuff that happens during the year. Because you're honestly dealing with human behavior, right? And it's difficult to codify human behavior, right? And so that's what the IRS is essentially trying to do. And at every step of the way, they're trying to get their cut. So yeah, so we're going to discuss those things, tax law changes, business in general. Occasionally, I'll put out some Call of Duty lives because I love playing Call of Duty. It's kind of that thing that keeps me kind of even. So, you just got to find that thing that evens you out, and that's it. Every weekend, a bunch of dads get together and we start playing Call of Duty. So yeah, so that's what we'll do, and then you'll see as time goes on. If you have any requests or anything, you shoot me a message, and we can talk about different topics and things like that. The one thing I did want to mention, just since we're starting Tax Tip Thursdays, is the first tip, right? So for this tax season, you don't want to be in a hurry to file. there's a lot of things happening right now. I know filing season initially was set to start on the 22nd of January, and then they moved it up to the 29th. And so that's when most people's returns started to get accepted by the IRS, right? So, um, but there are changes happening as of right now. I mean, they're still kind of in limbo, and the IRS has done this before, like during COVID, and there were some other times where they were, or Congress was going back and forth on certain rules, and then they made those rules retroactive after tax season or after some people filed, so they had to file an amendment. And that's why I say, wait, don't be the first in line to file this year, because there are some tax law changes that could affect you, and then who knows if they're just going to automatically make those changes and send you the right refund, because that's happened before, or if you're going to have to do an amended return to get those changes, and then get those additional dollars in terms of the refund. So that's my first tip: is don't be in a hurry to file. And then the law, we're going to go into it now. I haven't read the whole bill, but it's something that's actually being discussed right now. Let me put this up here on the screen. Okay. So what we're looking at is HR 7024, right? So let me see if I blow this up a little bit. Yeah, so HR 7024, Rep. John Smith or Jason Smith brought it to the House. As you can see, the date here is January 17th, right? So they brought this to the House, to the Ways and Means Committee, and it's an election year. So taxes also deal with politics. So keep that in mind. This is kind of the trajectory of everything before it becomes law. So right now, it was introduced. It passed the House, and now it's sitting in the Senate, and then eventually goes to the president, and then it becomes law. So that's how these bills get passed. This bill in particular, let's look at kind of the overview of what has happened so far, all actions here. Okay. So it was introduced on the 17th of January, which was a couple of weeks ago. It's gone through a couple of meetings, a couple of discussions, committee on rules discharge. So you can see kind of the progression here of what has happened. And then as of today, basically it's in limbo, right? As of today, as of last night, actually 8:33. So their motion is to reconsider without objection. And so this thing passes, it goes to the Senate passes it, it's going to be retroactive. And then what does it do, right? So where is it? Well, we're not going to go over the entire bill, but basically the summary is here. So the bill increases and modifies child tax credit provisions, increases depreciation allowances to promote economic innovation and growth, provides special rules for the taxation of residents of Taiwan. So if you live in Taiwan with income in the U.S., that's going to affect you. Increases tax relief provisions for losses due to natural disasters and wildfires. So if you were affected by any of that last year, it might affect your taxes. And then it increases the low-income housing tax credit. So, and this is retroactive, right? So they'll pass it, and then what will happen is they won't go, okay, yeah, from the next year's tax season on out, we're going to go ahead and make these changes. They go back and they say, okay, for tax year 2023, this will apply. And so that's why I say just wait to file, probably in late February, early March. This should kind of irons itself out, usually, unless there's some kind of amendment or something else that happens with this provision. But yeah, I'll make sure to, every Thursday at least mention what the status of this is, because it could affect how your refund is processed and what happens with your refund, right? So um, let me see. So that's gonna kind of be the only tax tip for today. I just wanted to introduce myself, introduce the stream every Thursday at 12 Central. This is all my contact information if you want to get a hold of me. The QR code is going to be at the top right, and then you can scan that. You can kind of see all the socials and everything else that I have going on in social media and the website, etc. So yeah, if you stop by, thanks again. Again, this was going to be a short one. I didn't want to make an hour's worth of content just because, this is the first one. I just wanted to introduce myself, um, and kind of what we're planning on doing here. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, and let me know if you have any questions.